The Wyoming wind carried more than dust that autumn of 1889. It carried the scent of sage and distant rain, the echo of coyote calls, and something else, something that made even hardened men pull their hat brims low and hurry past the abandoned Morgan Ranch. Ulysses Morgan reined in his horse at the edge of what used to be his property. 5 years gone, and the place looked like a skeleton picked clean by vultures. The barn door hung crooked on its hinges, creaking a lonesome tune. Tumbleweeds had claimed the front porch where his Mary used to rock their boy to sleep. He'd changed his name after the tragedy. Caleb was dead-died the same day his family did. Now he was just Ulysses, another drifter in a land full of ghosts. The October sun was bleeding red across the horizon when he saw her. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks. The cottonwood tree in the front yard, the one Mary had insisted on planting their first spring, had something hanging from its lowest branch. Not something, someone. Ulysses spurred his horse forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. As he drew closer, the shape resolved into a woman, her wrists bound above her head, toes barely touching the ground. Her dress was torn, revealing angry welts across her shoulders. Her head lolled forward, dark hair curtaining her face. "Jesus Christ," he breathed, swinging down from his saddle before the horse had fully stopped. He pulled his knife and sawed through the rope. The woman collapsed into his arms, lighter than a sack of grain, but twice as precious. Her skin burned with fever, lips cracked and bleeding. But when he pressed his ear to her chest, he heard it the stubborn thump of a heart refusing to quit. "Easy now," he murmured, though she couldn't hear him. He carried her into the house, kicking open the door he'd sworn never to cross again. The main room was thick with dust and memories. He laid her on the old sofa, the same one where he'd courted Mary all those years ago. In the fading light, he could see the woman's face properly, young, maybe 25, with high cheekbones and skin kissed gold by sun. Beautiful, despite the bruises mottling her jaw. He fetched water from the well, miracle it still worked, and set about cleaning her wounds. Someone had taken their time with her. The marks on her back weren't random. They formed a pattern, a message written in pain. As he worked, she stirred, mumbling words in a language he didn't recognize. Apache, maybe, or fever dreams. Night fell like a hammer. Ulysses built a fire in the hearth, the first warmth these walls had seen in years. He'd planned to water his horse and move on. Maybe make it to Casper by week's end. Instead, here he sat, playing nursemaid to a half-dead woman in a house full of ghosts. She woke near midnight, eyes flying open like a spooked Mustang. They were green as prairie grass after rain, and filled with terror. "You're safe," Ulysses said, holding up his hands. "Name's Ulysses. Found you hanging from that tree out front." She tried to speak, but only managed to croak. He helped her sip water, watching her throat work. When she finally found her voice, it was raw as torn silk. They'll come back." "Who'll come back?" "My father's men." She closed her eyes, and for a moment he thought she'd passed out again. "Then I'm Victoria Crowley." The name hit him like a punch to the gut. Crowley, as in Nathaniel Crowley, the man who owned half of Wyoming and had the blood of the other half on his hands, the man who had ordered the massacre at Bent Creek, the man responsible for it. Ulysses stood abruptly, fists clenched. Of all the people to wash up on his doorstep, it had to be Crowley's daughter. The irony tasted bitter as alkali water. "You're Crowley's girl." She must have heard something in his voice because her eyes snapped open again. "I'm nobody's girl. Not anymore." "Why were you?" He gestured vaguely toward the tree. "Because I loved the wrong man." Her laugh was broken glass. William. His name was William. They called him something else, something Apache, but to me, he was just William. The pieces clicked together in Ulysses's mind. He'd heard the rumors, even in his self-imposed exile. Nathaniel Crowley's daughter had run off with an Apache warrior. There'd been talk of search parties, rewards, threats of war. And now here she was, strung up like a warning. Your father did this. My father ordered it. His foreman, a man named Edison, carried it out, said I needed to be an example, said any woman who'd lay with savages deserved. She broke off, shuddering. William's dead. They made me watch before they brought me here. Ulysses turned away, staring into the fire. He thought of his own Mary, her body riddled with bullets, their son Joseph trying to shield her even as his own life bled out into the dirt. All because they'd been in the wrong place when Crowley's men came through, cleaning out an Apache camp that had dared to exist too close to white settlements. You can't stay here, he said finally. I know. Victoria struggled to sit up, gasping as the movement pulled at her wounds. I'll leave in the morning. Just needed to rest. That's not what I meant. He faced her again. This is my land. Was my land. Crowley's men know it's abandoned. They'll check here. Then why did you... Because I'm not an animal. The words came out harsher than intended. But come dawn, you need to be gone. Both of us do. She studied him in the firelight. You've lost someone too. It wasn't a question. Ulysses didn't answer. Instead, he fetched his saddlebags and pulled out some jerky and hardtack. Eat, you'll need strength. They sat in silence while she forced down the food. Outside, a wolf howled, long and mournful. The sound raised the hair on Ulysses' neck. Wolves meant movement, prey on the run, or predators on the hunt. They gave me 3 days, Victoria said suddenly. Edison said if I survived 3 days, it was God's will. She laughed again, that broken sound. Guess the Almighty has a sense of humor. Edison, Ulysses repeated. Theodore Edison. You know him. We've crossed paths. It was Edison who'd led the massacre at Bent Creek. Edison who'd put bullets in Mary and Joseph while Ulysses lay unconscious, shot in the back while trying to warn the Apache camp. Small world, getting smaller by the minute. A horse nickered outside. Not his horse. The sound came from the wrong direction. Ulysses was on his feet instantly. Rifle in hand, he peered through a crack in the shutters. 3 riders, moving slow, checking the outbuildings, even in the moonlight. He recognized the lead man's bulk. Theodore Edison himself, come to check his handiwork. Get down, Ulysses hissed. Behind the sofa, now! Victoria didn't argue. She slid to the floor, pressing herself into the shadows. Ulysses checked his rifle 5 shots and his pistol 6 more. 11 bullets against 3 men. He'd faced worse odds, but not in a long time. The riders were taking their time, confident. Why hurry when you're checking on a half-dead woman in an abandoned house? They had no idea anyone else was here. Ulysses's horse was in the barn, out of sight. With luck, they'd checked the tree, see she was gone, and figure coyotes or wolves had dragged her off. But luck had never been his friend. The front door exploded inward. Edison filled the doorway, pistol drawn. His eyes went wide when he saw Ulysses. Well, Caleb Morgan. Heard you were dead. You heard wrong. Edison's gaze flicked to the sofa, then back. A smile spread across his face, ugly as a fresh wound. Don't suppose you've seen a woman around here about yay high, dark hair, has a fondness for redskins. Nobody here but ghosts. Funny thing about ghosts. Edison stepped inside, his men flanking him. They don't leave fresh boot prints in the dust. The moment stretched tight as piano wire. Ulysses calculated angles, distances, chances. Edison was fast, but his men were green. Probably hired guns from back east. They held their weapons wrong, weight on the wrong foot, eyes watching Edison instead of... Victoria erupted from behind the sofa, swinging a poker from the fireplace. It caught the nearest gunman across the temple, dropping him like a stone. Ulysses moved in the same instant, rifle barking twice. The second man spun and fell. Edison's pistol roared. Splinters exploded from the wall, inches from Ulysses's head. He dove sideways, firing as he moved. Edison grunted, clutching his shoulder, but didn't go down. "You're protecting Crowley's used goods." Edison laughed, backing toward the door. "She's nothing but an Apache's white woman now. Worthless." "Get out," Ulysses growled. "Take your trash with you." Edison's eyes glittered with hate. "This isn't over. Morgan, Mr. Crowley wants his daughter back. One way or another. You just signed your own death warrant." "Wouldn't be the first time." Edison backed out, dragging his wounded men. Ulysses kept his rifle trained on the doorway until the sound of hooves faded into the night. Victoria stood in the middle of the room, poker still clutched in her hands, shaking like an aspen leaf. "They'll be back, with more men." "Yes." "Why did you—" She swayed on her feet. Ulysses caught her before she fell, easing her back onto the sofa. "Because I'm tired of running from ghosts," he said quietly. "And because Edison needs killing. Has for a long time." She looked up at him, those green eyes seeing too much. "This isn't about me at all, is it?" "No," he admitted. "But that doesn't mean I'll let them have you." Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the loose barn door like bones. Ulysses Morgan, who'd been Caleb once, in another life stood in his dead wife's house with Nathaniel Crowley's daughter and wondered if fate had a sense of humor or just a cruel streak. Either way, come morning, they'd need to run. But for tonight, the fire was warm, the woman was alive, and his ghosts felt a little quieter. It wasn't redemption, not by a long shot, but it was a start. The fever came with the dawn, fierce as prairie fire. Victoria thrashed on the sofa, calling out names in her delirium. William, mostly, but others too. Apache words tumbled from her lips like prayer beads, and each one twisted something deep in Ulysses's gut. He'd spent the night keeping watch, rifle across his knees, but now he knelt beside her with a damp cloth, trying to cool her burning skin. The wounds on her back had opened during the fight, seeping through the makeshift bandages. Infection, most likely. Out here, that was as good as a death sentence without proper medicine. She nalni, she murmured, fingers clutching at empty air. "William, she nalni." Ulysses didn't speak Apache, but he recognized the cadence of endearments. Mary used to whisper German words to their son, "Mein Schatz," "Mein Liebchen," little treasures from her grandmother's tongue. The memory cut sharp as winter wind. "Easy," he said, though she couldn't hear him through the fever. "Save your strength." She twisted suddenly, eyes flying open but seeing nothing. "The children. You have to save the children." His hand stilled on the cloth. "What children?" "In the smoke. They're screaming. William, please." Her back arched off the sofa, and he had to hold her down to keep her from tearing the wounds wider. "The soldiers are coming through the smoke." Christ, she wasn't just fevered, she was reliving something. Ulysses had seen men lost in such nightmares before, usually after battles. The mind fled to dark places when the body hurt too much to bear. "There's no smoke," he said firmly. "No soldiers. You're safe." But even as he said it, he heard horses approaching. Too many horses. He crossed to the window in 2 strides. A dozen riders, spread in a half circle around the house. Edison sat his horse in the center, left arm in a sling but his right hand steady on his rifle. Beside him rode a man Ulysses had hoped never to see again, Colonel George Custer himself, though he'd been calling himself a civilian contractor since the Army forced him out after Little Bighorn. "Morgan," Edison's voice carried clear in the morning air. "We know you're in there. Send out the woman, and we'll let you ride away." Ulysses laughed, short and bitter. Let him ride away? Not likely. Dead men told no tales, and Edison had never been one to leave witnesses. The lady's indisposed. He called back, "Come back next week." A rifle cracked. The window beside him exploded in a shower of glass. Victoria cried out, whether from the noise or her dreams. He couldn't tell. That was a warning. Custer said. His voice had the same arrogant edge Ulysses remembered from the war. The next one won't miss. Ulysses did quick math. 12 men, spread too wide to take down quickly. The house had thick walls, but they wouldn't stand up to sustained fire. The barn offered no better cover. And Victoria couldn't run, not with that fever eating her alive. "What do you want? Custer!" he shouted. "Thought you'd have crawled back east by now." "Mister, Crowley pays well for special problems." Custer replied, "His daughter's been corrupted by savages. Needs to be cleansed before she can return to civilized society." Cleansed. The word tasted like ash. He'd heard it before, usually right before someone decided to cleanse an Indian camp with fire and lead. Victoria stirred behind him, mumbling something about snow. Snow in October. The fever was getting worse. "Tell you what, Morgan." Edison again. "You served with a distinction in the war. Man like you doesn't need to die over some Apache's leavings. Walk out that front door, and we'll call it square. You never saw her, we never saw you." It was a lie, of course. But the fact that Edison was trying to negotiate meant they wanted to avoid a siege. Maybe they were worried about attracting attention. The nearest town was Laramie, 2 days' ride, but patrols sometimes came through. Counteroffer. Ulysses called. "You turn around and ride away. Tell Crowley his daughter died. Everyone goes home breathing." "Can't do that, friend." Custer sounded almost apologetic. "Man's paying us to bring her back, one way or another." One way or another, meaning alive if possible. But proof of death would suffice. Ulysses glanced back at Victoria. She'd gone still, too still. He checked, still breathing, but shallow. "She's sick," he said. "Fever from the beating your boys gave her. She might not make it anyway." "Then we'll take her body." Edison's voice had gone cold. "Mister, Crowley wants to bury his daughter proper, not leave her for the coyotes and that Apache buck's ghost." Something in those words sparked an idea. Dangerous, probably stupid, but better than waiting to be burned out. "You want her." Ulysses moved to the door, keeping low. "Come and get her, but I should warn you she's been talking fever talk, you know, all about the things she saw at Bent Creek." Silence from outside. Then Edison. "What's she saying?" "Names, mostly. The children who died. She was there, you know, with William's band. Saw the whole thing." He was making it up as he went, but something in Victoria's fevered rambling gave him the thread to pull. "Funny thing about witnesses, even fevered ones, they remember faces." She's lying. But Edison didn't sound sure. "Maybe. But she knew you. Didn't she call you by name when you strung her up? Makes a man wonder what else she knows. What else she might have told me." He paused, letting that sink in. "Course, dead women tell no tales, but I've got a good memory. And friends in the newspapers who love a good massacre story." More silence. He could almost hear them thinking, weighing options. Custer had survived Little Bighorn, but his reputation hadn't. Another massacre scandal would bury him for good. In Edison, he'd been careful to keep his name out of the reports from Bent Creek. "You're bluffing," Custer said finally. "Am I? Tell you what let me prove it?" Ulysses took a deep breath. This was the gamble. "Send one man in, unarmed. Let him see how sick she is. If she dies, you get the body, and nobody needs to know what she said. If she lives..." He let it hang. They'd expect a trap, of course, but they'd also be curious. And curiosity had killed more men than bullets out here. "I'll come," Edison said, alone. "Unarmed." "Fine." Ulysses heard him dismount, heard the clink of gun belt hitting ground. He backed away from the door, rifle steady. "It's open." Edison entered slow, hands visible. His shoulder was bandaged tight, but he moved easy enough. His eyes went straight to Victoria on the sofa. took in her pale face, the sweat-soaked hair. Jesus, he muttered. She looks half dead already. Closer to 3/4. Ulysses said, "Your handiwork." Edison's jaw tightened. Following orders, her father... "Save it!" Ulysses cut him off. "Question is, what now? You take her in this condition. She'll be dead before you make town. Then you've got to explain to Crowley how his daughter died in your care." Man like that, he might ask uncomfortable questions. "What are you proposing?" "Leave her with me. I've got some medical training from the war. Give me 3 days to break the fever. If she lives, she's all yours. If she dies, you still get the body, but at least you tried to save her." Edison studied him. "Why would you care?" "I don't, but I've seen enough death. And despite what you think, I've got no love for Apaches. Lost my own family to raiders." The lie came smooth as whiskey. "But she's just a woman, confused, maybe led astray. Doesn't deserve to die like this." It was a thin story, but it had enough truth to sell it. Edison looked back at Victoria, who chose that moment to moan softly, lost in her fever dreams. "William," she whispered. "The smoke, so much smoke." Edison went very still. "What's she saying?" "Been at it all night," Ulysses said carefully. "Something about smoke and children. Your name came up a few times, too." The color drained from Edison's face. He knew, then, there had been witnesses at Bent Creek. Maybe not Victoria specifically, but someone who'd lived to tell her about it. 3 days, he said abruptly. "But we camp right outside. You try to run, we'll hunt you down." Fair enough. Edison moved to the door, then paused. "Why'd you really save her? Morgan truth this time?" Ulysses met his gaze steady. "Because I couldn't save my own family. Maybe saving her balances the scales a little." It was closer to the truth than anything else he'd said. Edison nodded slowly, something like understanding in his eyes. Then he was gone, boots heavy on the porch. Ulysses waited until he heard Edison mount up, heard him giving orders to make camp. Then he sagged against the wall, suddenly exhausted. 3 days. He'd bought them 3 days. Now he just had to figure out how to keep a dying woman alive and find a way out of this trap. Victoria stirred on the sofa, eyes flickering open. For a moment, they were clear, focused. "Ulysses." "I'm here." I was dreaming." About the day they came to the winter camp. William tried to save the children, but there were too many soldiers. Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes. "I couldn't help. I just watched from the trees while they... Shh." He knelt beside her, surprised by the gentleness in his own voice. "That's done now." "No." Her hand found his, grip weak but desperate. "It's never done. The dead don't rest. They follow us. Always." Her eyes started to drift shut again. "Do you see them too, your ghosts?" "Every day," he admitted. "Then you understand." Her voice faded to a whisper. "Why I couldn't leave William. Why I can't let go now. Love doesn't die just because the body does." The words hit him like a physical blow. Mary's face swam before him, smiling the way she had on their wedding day. Joseph's laugh echoed in the empty house. Love doesn't die. "Rest," he managed through a throat gone tight. "You need to rest." She slipped back into sleep, or unconsciousness, he couldn't tell which. Ulysses stayed there, her hand in his, watching the sun climb higher through the broken window. Outside, he could hear Edison's men setting up camp, talking about cards and whiskey and women. 3 days to save a woman who might already be too far gone. 3 days to find a way past 12 armed men. 3 days to decide if living was worth the price of caring again. He looked down at Victoria's fever-flushed face and saw not Crowley's daughter or an Apache's woman, but just another soul caught in the crossfire of hatred and history, like Mary, like Joseph, like himself. "Hold on," he whispered. not sure if he was talking to her or himself. Just hold on a little longer. The wind outside had shifted, bringing the smell of snow. Winter coming early, like everything else in this God-forsaken country. But for now, the house was warm. The woman still breathed, and his ghosts were quiet. It wasn't hope, exactly, but it was enough to start. The fever broke on the second night, but their luck ran out with it. Edison's patience had worn thin as old leather, and Ulysses could see it in the way the men prowled the perimeter, restless as caged wolves. "We need to move," Victoria whispered. She'd been lucid for the past few hours, weak but alert. The color had returned to her cheeks, though the wounds on her back still wept through their bandages. Ulysses nodded. He'd been thinking the same thing. "Can you ride?" "I'll have to." She pushed herself up, wincing. "There's something I need to tell you about my father." "Save it. We need to focus on—" "No." Her green eyes blazed with sudden intensity. "You need to know. The massacre at Bent Creek, it wasn't random. Father had surveys done. There's silver in those hills. The Apache camp was sitting right on top of it." The words hit like cold water. Ulysses stared at her. "You're saying he ordered the attack for mining rights?" "I found the papers in his study, maps, assay reports, letters to investors back east." She gripped his arm. "Your family, they weren't just casualties. They were witnesses. Father couldn't risk anyone talking about what really happened." The room tilted. Ulysses gripped the table edge, knuckles white. All this time, he'd thought Mary and Joseph were just wrong place, wrong time. But if Victoria was right, "That's why he wants you back," he said slowly. "You know too much. And now so do you." She struggled to her feet, swaying slightly. "We can't let them take us. Ulysses, not alive." He was already moving, gathering supplies with practiced efficiency. 2 canteens, what little food remained. Ammunition. His movements felt distant, mechanical, while his mind reeled with this new truth. "There's an old mine shaft," he said. "About 5 miles north. Leads through the mountain and comes out near Devil's Canyon. If we can reach it." "They'll track us." "Not through the shaft. Too dangerous. They'll have to go around." He pulled on his coat, helped her into Mary's old riding cloak. It still smelled faintly of lavender. "Storm's coming. That'll help." She was right about the storm. The wind had picked up, driving ice crystals against the windows. Good for covering tracks, bad for traveling, but they were out of options. Ulysses eased open the back door. Scanning the darkness, Edison had posted 2 men on this side, huddled around a small fire. Sloppy, the fire would ruin their night vision. "Stay close," he breathed. "When I move, you move." They slipped out like shadows, keeping the house between them and the main camp. The horses were picketed near the barn, his own mount and Victoria's, which Edison's men had brought. Ulysses had been feeding them extra grain for 2 days, preparing for this. They'd almost reached the horses when a figure stepped out of the barn. Samuel Morse, one of Edison's younger guns, fumbling with his trousers. He looked up, saw them, and opened his mouth to yell. Ulysses's knife took him in the throat before he could make a sound. The boy he couldn't have been more than 20 dropped, hands clutching at the wound. His eyes were wide, confused, accusing. "I'm sorry," Ulysses whispered, and meant it. But sorry didn't bring back the dead. Victoria was already moving, untying the horses with steady hands, whatever squeamishness she might have once had. William's death had burned it out of her. They mounted up just as shouts erupted from the camp. "Ride!" Ulysses spurred his horse north, Victoria beside him. Gunfire cracked behind them, muzzle flashes lighting up the night. A bullet whined past his ear. Another kicked up dirt to his left. The storm hit them like a fist as they cleared the ranch. Snow driven horizontal by the wind, visibility down to yards. The horses struggled, but Ulysses knew this land. Every gulch, every rise, every twist of the old game trails. They rode hard for an hour, pushing through drifts that grew deeper by the minute. Behind them, no pursuit, or at least none they could hear over the wind. Edison would wait for daylight. Probably, even he wasn't fool enough to chase them blind into a blizzard. The mine shaft appeared as a darker shadow against the hillside. Ulysses dismounted, helped Victoria down. She was shivering violently, the ride having sapped what strength she'd regained. "Can't take the horses," he said. "Shaft's too narrow." She nodded, understanding. They'd be on foot from here, but the horses would leave clear tracks leading away from their real path. With luck, Edison would follow the animals instead of checking the mine. The shaft entrance was partially collapsed, timbers rotting after decades of abandonment. Ulysses lit a torch from his saddlebags, the flame flickering wildly in the wind. "Ever been in a mine before?" "No." Victoria pressed close behind him as they entered. "Is it safe?" "Safer than out there." Which wasn't saying much. The shaft angled down steeply. Walls sweating moisture that had frozen into sheets of ice, their breath plumed white in the torchlight. They descended carefully, Ulysses testing each step. The timbers groaned overhead, showering them with dirt and ice. Somewhere in the darkness, water dripped with metronome regularity. "Tell me about William," he said, partly to distract her from the claustrophobic weight of stone above them, partly because he needed to know. "He was—" She paused, searching for words. "He was nothing like what they say about Apaches. Gentle. He laughed at my terrible attempts to speak his language. He showed me how to read the sky for weather, how to find water in the desert." Her voice caught. "He was teaching our son to track rabbits when the soldiers came." Ulysses stopped so abruptly she bumped into him. "Your son, Thomas. He was 3. The words came out flat, emptied of emotion by too much pain. "William tried to shield him, but there were so many bullets." Christ. No wonder she'd been delirious, talking about children and smoke. She'd watched her child die along with her lover. "I'm sorry," he said, the words pathetically inadequate. "They're together now." She touched his shoulder. "Like you're Mary and Joseph. That's what I tell myself. That they're together, somewhere beyond all this hate." They continued deeper, the passage narrowing until they had to turn sideways in places. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. Ulysses's torch was burning low, shadows dancing crazily on the walls. Then Victoria gasped. "Look!" Scratched into the rock were names, dozens of them, Apache names, Spanish names, even some Chinese characters, miners who'd worked these passages, leaving their marks in the stone. "We're not the first to run this way," Ulysses murmured. "And probably not the last." Victoria traced one of the names with her finger. "All these people, fleeing something, persecution, poverty, death." She looked at him. "What are we fleeing?" "Ulysses." "The past," he said without thinking. "Can't flee that. I tried. It follows anyway." She started walking again. "But maybe we can change what it means. Maybe that's all any of us can do." The passage began to angle upward. Fresh air touched their faces, carrying the scent of snow and pine. They emerged on the far side of the mountain just as dawn was breaking, the storm having blown itself out. Below them stretched Devil's Canyon, a maze of red rock and shadow. To the east, smoke rose from what had to be Edison's camp. They'd bought themselves time, but not much. "Where now?" Victoria asked. Ulysses pointed northwest. "There's a trading post at Fort Bridger. Old friend of mine runs it, Jim Bridger himself. He's no friend to Crowley or the army. Might shelter us long enough to figure out our next move. And after that," he looked at her, this woman who'd lost everything and somehow kept going. Like him, like all the survivors in this hard land. "After that, we keep running until we find a place where the past can't follow. California, maybe, or Oregon. Somewhere we can be different people. I don't want to be different. She pulled the cloak tighter around her shoulders. I want to be myself without apologizing for who I loved. Then we'll find that place, he said, however long it takes. They started down into the canyon, picking their way carefully through the snow-covered rocks. Behind them, the mine shaft gaped like a mouth, having swallowed their tracks and spit them out transformed. No longer pursuer and pursued, but two souls bound by loss and the stubborn refusal to let hatred win. The sun climbed higher, painting the canyon walls gold and crimson. Somewhere ahead lay Fort Bridger and the hope of sanctuary. Somewhere behind, Edison and his men would be saddling up, following horse tracks into nowhere. Ulysses, Victoria said suddenly, I need to ask you something. Ask. When this is over, if we make it, will you help me do something? He glanced at her warily. Depends on what. I want to go back to where they killed William and Thomas. Want to bury them proper, with their real names on markers. Not as Apache and half-breed, but as the man and boy they were. Her jaws set with determination. And I want to put up a stone for your Mary and Joseph, too, in the same place. Let them all rest together. The request knocked the breath from him. He walked in silence for a long moment, wrestling with the idea. Crowley's daughter wanting to honor his family alongside her Apache lover and mixed-blood son, the sheer defiance of it, the refusal to let division persist even in death. Yes, he heard himself say, we'll do that. When it's safe. She smiled then, the first real smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, and for an instant he saw who she must have been before young, hopeful, in love with someone the world said she shouldn't touch. Thank you, she said simply. They walked on, two unlikely allies against the rising sun. The canyon walls echoed with their footsteps and the distant cry of an eagle. Somewhere, Edison was discovering their deception. Somewhere. Nathaniel Crowley waited for news of his wayward daughter. But here, now, there was only the path ahead and the strange comfort of not being alone with the ghosts. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It wasn't even peace. But it was a beginning. The cave was their third shelter in as many nights, carved by wind and time into the red sandstone cliffs of Devil's Canyon. Outside, rain hammered down in sheets, turning the desert floor into a maze of flash floods. They'd been lucky to find high ground before the storm hit. Victoria sat with her back against the cave wall, knees drawn to her chest. The firelight played across her face, highlighting the hollows that hunger had carved beneath her cheekbones. They'd run out of food that morning, and Fort Bridger was still 2 days away. You're staring, she said without looking at him. Ulysses turned his attention back to cleaning his rifle. Just thinking. Dangerous habit out here. She shifted, wincing as the movement pulled at her healing wounds. What about how different this is from the war? There, you knew who the enemy was, wore different uniforms, flew different flags. He ran the cleaning rod through the barrel one more time. Out here, everyone looks the same until they're shooting at you. Or until they're not. She finally met his eyes. Like you. The cave fell silent except for the rain and the pop of burning wood. They'd been dancing around this for days, the strange trust that had grown between them. Born of necessity but becoming something else. Something neither quite knew how to name. Victoria broke first. In the mine shaft, when I told you about Thomas. She swallowed hard. I've never told anyone that, not even Father. He thinks William forced himself on me. That Thomas was. She couldn't finish. You don't owe me explanations, Ulysses said quietly. Maybe not, but I want you to understand. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. It was his blanket. He'd given it to her 2 nights ago when her shivering wouldn't stop. I met William at a trading post. Father had sent me to buy supplies with our foreman. William was there with his uncle, trading horses. She smiled at the memory, soft and sad. He dropped a saddle when he saw me, just stared like he'd been struck by lightning. His uncle cuffed him upside the head, told him to stop gawking at the white woman. But later, when the foreman was haggling over prices, William approached me. "Brave of him," Ulysses observed. "Or foolish?" "Both." Her smile widened slightly. "He offered me a carved wooden horse, said it was for luck. I should have refused, but something in his eyes—" She shrugged. 3 months later, I was stealing out at night to meet him by the river. 6 months later, I couldn't imagine life without him. Your father must have... Father was in Denver, negotiating railroad contracts. By the time he returned, I was already carrying Thomas. Her expression hardened. He locked me in my room, had the windows barred, said he'd send me to an asylum back east, have the baby taken away. That's when I ran. Ulysses set aside the rifle, giving her his full attention now. "How did you find William again?" "I didn't have to. He found me." Tears gathered in her eyes, but didn't fall. "He'd been watching the house, waiting. The night I escaped. He was there with horses. We rode for 3 days straight, barely stopping. His people took me in, even though many didn't want a white woman in their camp. But William's mother, she..." Victoria's voice broke. "Take your time," Ulysses said. She nodded, composing herself. "She delivered Thomas herself, taught me their ways, their language. For 3 years, I had a real family. Not the cold mansion with servants and rules, but people who laughed and argued and loved without shame." The tears came now, silent streams down her cheeks. "Then Edison found us." Ulysses moved without thinking, shifting to sit beside her, not touching, just close enough that she could feel his presence. "The attack at Bent Creek. We'd moved there for the winter. William thought we were far enough from Father's reach." She laughed bitterly. "But Silver doesn't care about distance. Father needed that land cleared, and Edison was happy to oblige. They came at dawn, when most were still sleeping. You don't have to..." "Yes, I do." Her hand found his in the darkness, gripped tight. William heard them coming, scouts, moving too loud. He woke the camp, but there wasn't time. When the shooting started, he grabbed Thomas and ran for the river. I followed, but soldiers cut us off. I watched from the rocks as they... Her voice failed completely. Ulysses turned his hand, interlacing their fingers. The gesture felt dangerous, like stepping off a cliff, but he couldn't pull away. "I'm sorry," he said, the words he'd been unable to say about his own family. "I'm so goddamn sorry." After, when they were collecting bodies, I heard Edison talking, saying they needed to check everyone, make sure no one survived to talk. That's when I understood. It wasn't about clearing savages. It was about witnesses. She looked at him, eyes fierce through the tears. "You're Mary. She saw something, didn't she?" Ulysses nodded slowly. "She'd gone to deliver bread to the Apache camp. Did it sometimes. Part of her church work. She believed in bridges between peoples." The irony twisted his gut. Wrong day to believe in kindness. "No." Victoria's grip tightened. "Never wrong to believe in kindness. That's what they want for us to stop believing, stop caring, to be like them." Thunder crashed overhead, so loud the cave seemed to shake. In the flash of lightning that followed, Ulysses saw her face clearly, not Crowley's daughter, not an Apache's woman, but simply Victoria, fierce and broken and somehow still standing. "Don't stop," she whispered. "What?" "Your hand. Don't stop touching me." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I haven't... Since William, no one has touched me with kindness. Even when you were tending my wounds, you were careful not to... But I need..." She broke off, cheeks flushing. Ulysses understood. The hunger for human connection, for touch that didn't hurt. He'd felt it himself. The aching loneliness of skin that remembered love but found only emptiness. Victoria. Her name felt new on his tongue, weighted with possibility. She turned toward him, and suddenly the space between them collapsed. Not a passionate rush, but a careful drawing together, like two wounded animals seeking warmth. Her forehead touched his, her breath mingling with his own. "I dream about them," she whispered. "Every night, William and Thomas and your Mary and Joseph. All of them mixed together. They're calling to me from across a river, but I can't reach them." "I know." His free hand rose to cup her face, thumb brushing away tears. "I have the same dream, except in mine. Mary tells me to stop trying to cross, to turn around and find the living. Maybe they're wiser than us, even in death." She tilted her face up slightly, and their lips were so close he could feel the heat between them. "Ulysses, Shh." He closed the final distance, kissing her with all the gentleness he could manage. She made a sound, half sob, half sigh, and melted against him. The kiss was nothing like the passionate encounters of youth. It was careful, tentative, flavored with salt tears and the metallic taste of fear. But beneath that ran something else, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire, a promise that neither was alone in their grief. When they broke apart, Victoria was trembling. "I didn't think I could feel this again," she admitted. "Didn't think I had the right." "Neither did I." He pulled her against him, her head fitting perfectly beneath his chin. "Maybe we don't. Maybe this is just two ghosts pretending to be alive." "Then let's pretend." She burrowed closer, her body a warm weight against his side. "For tonight, let's pretend we're just two people who found each other in a storm." They sat like that as the rain hammered down, not speaking, not moving except to add wood to the fire. Ulysses felt something unknot in his chest, a tension he'd carried so long he'd forgotten it was there. Not healing that would take longer than they probably had, but for the first time in 5 years, the possibility of healing. "When we get to Fort Bridger," Victoria said eventually, voice drowsy with exhaustion. "What then?" "Jim will hide us for a while. Give us time to plan." He stroked her hair absently, marveling at its softness. "I've got some money hidden, enough to get us to California. Maybe start something new." "Us," she tested the word. "You'd stay with me, even knowing who my father is, what he's done." "You're not him," Ulysses said firmly. "Any more than I'm the man who killed William's cousins in the war. We are what we choose to be going forward." She was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. "Then I choose you, if you'll have me. Not because I need protection or because I'm scared, but because when you touch me, I remember who I was before all the hate. I remember how to hope." The words broke something loose in him. He turned her face up, kissing her again, deeper this time. She responded with equal fervor, hands fisting in his shirt. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "This is crazy," she gasped. "Edison's still hunting us. Father won't stop. We could die tomorrow." "Then we'd better make tonight count." The words came out rougher than intended, heavy with promise. She studied his face in the firelight, then nodded slowly. "Yes." What followed was careful and sweet. Two damaged souls relearning the language of desire. Each touch was a question, each kiss an answer. When clothing fell away, they traced each other's scars, his from bullets and knives, hers from whips and worse. Battle maps of survival, proof they'd endured. "Beautiful," Ulysses murmured against her throat, and meant it. Not despite the damage, but because of it. Because she'd survived. Because they both had. "Liar," she whispered back, but she was crying again. Good tears this time. They made love slowly, carefully, aware of her still healing wounds. It was nothing like the desperate couplings of youth or the comfortable familiarity of marriage. This was something new, a claiming and a surrender, a promise made in flesh and breath and the salt taste of mingled tears. Afterward, they lay entwined beneath his coat and her blanket, skin cooling as the fire burned low. The storm was passing. thunder growing distant. William wouldn't mind, Victoria said suddenly. He'd want me to live, to love again. Mary, too. Ulysses pressed his lips to her hair. Probably knocked me upside the head for taking so long to figure it out. Then we're fools, she said. But maybe that's what it takes to survive out here. A little foolishness, a little faith. A lot of both, he corrected, and felt her smile against his chest. They dozed fitfully, waking to add wood to the fire or shift positions. Each time, they reached for each other, confirming the other was real. Was alive. The cave had become a sanctuary, the storm a blessing that held the world at bay. But morning would come, as it always did. Edison would still be hunting. Crowley would still want his daughter back. The past would still follow them like smoke on the wind. For now, though, there was this two hearts beating in the darkness, two souls choosing each other over ghosts. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was rebirth, raw and painful and necessary as breathing. Promise me something, Victoria said, as dawn began to gray the sky beyond the cave mouth. What? If they catch us, if it comes to that. She pulled back to look at him, eyes serious. Don't let them take me alive. I won't go back to being his daughter. I won't let them erase who I've become. They won't take you. He gripped her shoulders gently. I swear it. But if... Then we go together. The words came without thought, but he knew them for truth. Both of us or neither. No more being alone. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate and full of life. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. Soon they'd have to leave, face whatever waited beyond the cave. But for this moment, they had each other. It was enough. It was everything. It was a beginning. The town of Dustwater sprawled across the desert like a scab on sunburned skin. 24 buildings lined the Main Street saloons, a general store, a hotel that rented rooms by the hour, and the sheriff's office where justice was as flexible as a dollar bill. It was the kind of place where men came to disappear, and women came to be forgotten. Ulysses and Victoria approached from the south, having circled wide around Fort Bridger when they spotted Edison's men watching the roads. 3 weeks of running had worn them down to sinew and determination. Their clothes were trail dusty, faces gaunt, but something had hardened in their eyes, a resolve that made other travelers give them wide berth. Remember, Ulysses murmured as they hitched their stolen horses outside the Broken Wheel Saloon. We're Thomas and Mary Payne, cattle buyers from Colorado, married 2 years. Victoria adjusted the plain gold band they'd bought from a traveling merchant, Ulysses's last $20. And if someone recognizes me, then we improvise. He touched the Colt at his hip, a gesture that had become habit. But Dustwater's not the kind of place where folks ask questions. They pushed through the saloon doors into a wall of smoke and sour whiskey smell. The Broken Wheel was exactly what they'd hoped: dark, crowded, full of men more interested in cards and liquor than strangers. Ulysses guided Victoria to a corner table, positioning himself where he could watch both entrances. What'll it be? The bartender was a mountain of a man with scarred knuckles and careful eyes. Whiskey, Ulysses said, and information, if you're selling. The man's eyes narrowed. Information's expensive in Dustwater. So's ignorance. Ulysses slid a silver dollar across the scarred wood. We're looking for a man named Benjamin Franklin. Heard he might be in town. The bartender palmed the coin with practiced ease. Franklin's got a place north of town, Old Butterfield Station, but I'd think twice before calling on him. Man's got peculiar notions about visitors. We'll take our chances. Ulysses poured 2 shots from the bottle the bartender left. Any other news a traveler should know? Depends. The bartender's gaze flicked to Victoria. You're running from something, Mr. Aren't we all? That earned a bark of laughter. Fair enough. Word is there's a group of hired guns came through yesterday, led by some injured fellow with a mean look. They were asking about a woman, dark hair, green eyes. Said she'd stolen something valuable from her employer. Victoria's hand tightened on her glass, but her expression didn't change. She'd learned to school her features these past weeks, to wear calmness like armor. Sounds like trouble, Ulysses said casually. We'll be sure to keep clear. The bartender moved away, and they sat in silence, sipping whiskey that burned like liquid fire. Around them, the saloon's life swirled poker games, drunken arguments. A woman in faded silk working the room with tired smiles. He's here, Victoria whispered. Edison, I can feel him. Easy. We knew this might happen. Ulysses covered her hand with his. Franklin first. If he's who Jim said he was, we'll have options. Benjamin Franklin, no relation to the founding father. Despite the name, was what people in these parts called a conductor. Not for any railroad, but for folks who needed to disappear. Jim Bridger had given them his name in the last message they'd received before fleeing the fort. Your Indian lover. A voice slurred behind them. Heard you screamed real pretty when they strung you up. They turned, slowly. A cowhand stood swaying, eyes glazed with drink, but mean. He was looking at Victoria with the kind of recognition that made Ulysses's blood run cold. You're mistaken, friend, Ulysses said evenly. My wife's never... Nah, I seen her. The drunk pointed an unsteady finger. At the Crowley Ranch. 'Fore she ran off with that Apache buck. Whole territory was talking about it. The saloon had gone quiet, that dangerous hush that preceded violence. Ulysses felt Victoria tense beside him, ready to run or fight, but running would confirm the drunk's words, and fighting would bring attention they couldn't afford. Mister, Ulysses said, standing slowly, you're drunk and confused, but I'll give you one chance to apologize to my wife and walk away. Or what? The drunk's hand drifted toward his gun. You'll defend your squaw-loving. Ulysses moved like lightning, his fist connected with the drunk's jaw, spinning him into a table. Cards and coins scattered. Men jumped back, hands reaching for weapons. Anyone else want to insult my wife? Ulysses asked the room at large. His hand rested on his Colt, casual but ready. Nobody moved. Then the bartender laughed. Tom, you need to leave. Now! The drunk Tom struggled to his feet, blood streaming from his nose. He looked like he might try again. But something in Ulysses' eyes changed his mind. He stumbled out, muttering curses. Sorry about the disturbance. Ulysses told the bartender, We'll be going. Might be best. The man agreed. Tom's got friends, and a big mouth. They left through the back, Victoria gripping Ulysses' arm. He recognized me. Maybe, or maybe he was just drunk and guessing. But Ulysses knew better. Their time was running out. Come on, we'll find Franklin tonight. The Butterfield station sat 3 miles from town, a cluster of adobe buildings slowly returning to dust. A single light showed in what had been the main house. As they approached, a voice called from the shadows. That's close enough. State your business. Jim Bridger sent us. Ulysses called back. Said Benjamin Franklin might help with a travel problem. Silence. Then, tie your horses and come forward. Hands where I can see them. They did as instructed. The door opened, revealing a small man with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. He looked more like a schoolteacher than someone who helped outlaws disappear. I'm Mr. and Mrs. Payne, I presume. His smile was knowing. Jim sent word you might come. Please, enter. The house was surprisingly well-appointed books lining the walls. Good furniture, even a piano in the corner. Franklin gestured them to chairs and poured brandy from a crystal decanter. Now then, he said, settling behind a desk. Jim's message was necessarily vague. Perhaps you could elaborate on your situation? Ulysses glanced at Victoria, who nodded. They'd agreed she should tell it her story carried more weight. "My name is Victoria Crowley," she began, and Franklin's eyebrows rose. "Yes, that Crowley. I fell in love with an Apache man, had his child. My father ordered them killed and tried to have me hanged. This man," she touched Ulysses' arm, "saved me. Now we're being hunted by my father's men, led by Theodore Edison." "Edison." Franklin's face darkened. "I know the name, and the reputation." He studied them over his spectacles. "You're asking for new identities. I assume passage somewhere safe." "California," Ulysses said. "We have some money." "Keep it. You'll need it where you're going." Franklin opened a drawer, pulling out papers. "I don't do this for profit, Mr. Morgan. Oh yes, I know who you are too. The man who lost his family at Bent Creek. The man who vanished into grief." He began writing. "I do this because I believe in second chances, and because men like Edison and Crowley have had their boot on this territory's throat for too long." "You're taking a risk," Victoria said. "Life is risk, my dear. The question is whether the risk serves a purpose." He handed them each a set of documents. Samuel and Grace Hammond, originally from Ohio, married in Denver, heading to California to start a fruit orchard. I have contacts in Sacramento who'll vouch for you. Just like that. Ulysses examined the papers. They were flawless, worn in the right places, officially stamped. Hardly just like that. I've been preparing these for weeks, ever since Jim's first message. Franklin smiled. "I may look like a mouse, but I have ears throughout the territory. I knew you were coming before you did." "What about Edison?" Victoria asked. Franklin's expression sobered. "Yes, Edison. He arrived in Dustwater yesterday with a dozen men. They're watching the roads, checking every woman who tries to leave." He walked to the window, peering out. "But there's another way. A freight wagon leaves tomorrow night for Salt Lake City. The driver owes me favors. You'll be hidden in the cargo, uncomfortable, but safe. Tomorrow night." Ulysses frowned. "That's a long time to hide in Dustwater." "Not in Dustwater. Here." Franklin gestured around the room. "I have a hidden cellar, provisioned for just such occasions. You'll wait there until—" The window exploded in a shower of glass. Franklin spun and fell, blood spreading across his white shirt. Victoria screamed. Ulysses threw himself over her, dragging her behind the heavy desk as more shots peppered the walls. "Franklin's harboring fugitives," Edison's voice boomed from outside. "Surrender now, and we might let him live." Franklin was crawling toward them, leaving a red trail. "Cellar," he gasped. "Under the piano. Go." Ulysses grabbed the wounded man, hauling him behind the desk. The shot had taken him high in the shoulder, painful but not immediately fatal if they could stop the bleeding. "Watch him," Ulysses told Victoria, pressing his Colt into her hands. "I'll hold them off." Like hell. She was already tearing strips from her petticoat for bandages. "We do this together. Remember?" More shots. The door burst open, and two men rushed in. Ulysses' rifle spoke twice, dropping both. But more were coming. He could hear Edison directing them to surround the house. "How many?" Victoria asked, working frantically on Franklin's wound. "Too many." Ulysses reloaded, mind racing. "We need—" The piano exploded in a cacophony of splintered wood and tangled wires as someone shot through the window. But the damage revealed what Franklin had mentioned, a trapdoor in the floor. "Go!" Franklin wheezed. "Tunnel leads to the stable. Horses there, saddlebags with supplies." "We're not leaving you," Victoria said. "You are." His voice grew stronger with urgency. "This is what I do. Give people second chances. Don't waste yours." Edison's men were closing in, boots thundering on the porch. Ulysses made the hard choice. He lifted the trapdoor, revealing a ladder into darkness. "Victoria, go!" She looked at Franklin, tears streaming. I'm sorry. Don't be. Tell your children you knew Benjamin Franklin. Tell them he died free. He pulled a derringer from his vest. Now, go. They descended into musty darkness as the house erupted in gunfire above. The tunnel was narrow, hand-dug. Shored with rough timbers, they crawled on hands and knees, dirt showering down with each impact overhead. Behind them, Franklin's derringer cracked twice, followed by a fusillade of return fire, then silence. The tunnel ended in another ladder. Ulysses climbed up cautiously, finding himself in a hay-filled stable. 2 horses stood saddled and ready, just as Franklin had promised. The saddlebags bulged with supplies. He planned for everything, Victoria whispered, emerging beside him. Men like him always do. Ulysses helped her mount. Ready. She nodded, jaw set with determination. They burst from the stable at full gallop, scattering chickens and raising dust. Behind them, shouts erupted as Edison's men realized their escape. Gunfire chased them into the darkness, muzzle flashes like angry fireflies. A bullet tugged at Ulysses's sleeve. Another whined past Victoria's head, but Franklin had chosen well. The horses were swift and sure-footed, bred for hard riding. They raced north through the desert, following stars and instinct. The sounds of pursuit faded, but Ulysses knew it was temporary. Come dawn, Edison would have trackers on their trail. Ulysses' Victoria pointed ahead. Riders. 3 horsemen blocked their path, weapons drawn. Ulysses's heart sank, trapped between Edison and whoever these were. Samuel Hammond, one rider called. Franklin sent word you might need help. The tension drained from Ulysses like water. More of Franklin's network. The man really had planned for everything. We need to keep moving, the lead rider said. There's a way station 10 miles north. We'll switch horses there, throw off the trackers. They rode through the night, changing horses twice, doubling back and using every trick to confuse pursuit. By dawn, they were 50 miles from Dustwater, heading into the Badlands where tracking became nearly impossible. He's dead, isn't he? Victoria said as they paused to water the horses. Franklin? Yes, Ulysses didn't soften it. She deserved truth. But he knew the risks, chose them freely. All these people dying because of me. She stared at the sunrise, painted crimson across the desert. William, Thomas, Franklin. How many more? They didn't die because of you. He turned her to face him. They died because they believed in something. Love, justice, freedom to choose who we become. He touched her face gently. Franklin was right. We can't waste what they gave us. She leaned into his touch. California, then California, new names, new lives, Samuel and Grace Hammond. He smiled sadly. Think you can love a man named Samuel? I already do. She kissed him softly. Whatever name he wears. They mounted up as the sun climbed higher. Behind them, their past burned away like morning mist. Ahead lay the unknown, dangerous still, but bright with possibility. Edison would keep hunting. Crowley would never forgive. But Benjamin Franklin had given them what they needed most, a chance. Now it was up to them to make it count. As they rode into the rising sun, Victoria began to hum. It was an Apache lullaby, one William had sung to Thomas. The melody drifted across the desert, a ghost made beautiful by memory. Ulysses found himself humming along, adding his voice to hers. 2 broken souls, making music from their scars. It wasn't the life either had planned, but maybe, just maybe, it was the life they were meant to find. The desert stretched endless before them, and they rode toward whatever future they could build from the ashes of their past. The forest burned like the world's funeral pyre. Smoke rolled through the pines in great gray walls, driven by winds that howled like demons. Somewhere in that inferno, Edison's men had them surrounded, using fire as their final weapon. Ulysses pressed a wet bandana to Victoria's face as they stumbled through the undergrowth. They'd been so close Salt Lake City just 2 days away, California almost within reach. Then Edison had found them again, patient as death itself. "This way," he gasped, pulling her toward a creek bed. The water might offer some protection, though against a forest fire, it would be like holding up a parasol in a hurricane. Behind them, gunshots cracked through the roar of flames. Edison wasn't taking chances this time. Burn them out or shoot them down either way ended their run. "Ulysses." Victoria's voice was raw from smoke. "The cliff." He saw it too, a sheer drop where the creek plunged into a canyon. 20 feet, maybe 30. The pool below was dark. Depth unknown. But the fire was eating ground fast, and Edison's shouts were getting closer. "Can you swim?" "William taught me." No hesitation. Just that steel she'd found in herself. Together. Together. They clasped hands and ran for the edge. The world tilted, stomach dropping as they fell. The impact was brutal cold water like a giant's fist, driving air from lungs. Ulysses kicked hard, dragging them both to the surface. "You all right?" he gasped. Victoria nodded, teeth already chattering. The pool was deep but narrow, fed by snowmelt from the mountains. They swam to the far side, hauling themselves onto rocks slick with moss. Above, Edison appeared at the cliff's edge, silhouetted against the burning sky. His face was a mask of rage and soot. "You think water will save you? This canyon's a box, only one way out. And we'll be waiting." He was right. The canyon walls were sheer, the exit somewhere downstream. They'd traded fire for a cage. "Let them come," Victoria said quietly. She checked the colt they'd wrapped in oilcloth, still dry, still deadly. "I'm done running." They moved downstream, staying close to the water where smoke was thinner. The canyon narrowed, walls pressing close, somewhere ahead. Edison's men would be setting up, turning the only exit into a killing field. Wait. Ulysses spotted something, a game trail switchbacking up the canyon wall. Barely visible, probably used by bighorn sheep. It would be treacherous, exposed. But it beat walking into Edison's guns. They climbed. The trail was worse than dangerous. It was nearly suicidal. Loose shale scattered under their boots, threatening to send them tumbling. But they climbed, using juniper roots as handholds, pressing against stone worn smooth by centuries. Halfway up, Victoria froze. "Look!" Below, Edison's men were entering the canyon, spread in a skirmish line, but they were all looking downstream, toward the obvious exit. None thought to look up. "Keep moving," Ulysses whispered, slow and quiet. They inched higher. The smoke was thicker here. Driven by updrafts, it hid them but made breathing agony. Ulysses' eyes streamed, throat burning. Beside him, Victoria moved like a ghost, every footfall precise despite exhaustion. Then her foot slipped. The rock clattered down, bouncing off the canyon wall with echoes like gunshots. Below, heads snapped up. Someone yelled. Rifles swung their way. "Run!" They abandoned stealth for speed, scrambling up the trail as bullets sparked off stone. The rim was close, so close. Victoria cried out, stumbling, blood spread across her sleeve. "I'm fine," she gasped, but her face had gone pale. "Keep going." Ulysses half-carried her the last few yards, throwing them both over the rim as bullets whined past. They rolled into cover behind a fallen log, gasping. "Let me see." He tore away the bloody fabric. The bullet had gouged a furrow across her upper arm, painful but not serious if kept clean. He bound it quickly with strips from his shirt. "They'll be coming," Victoria said. "I know." Ulysses checked their weapons. His rifle, her Colt, maybe 30 rounds between them. Against a dozen men, it wasn't enough. "We need to move." But as they rose, riders appeared through the smoke. Not Edison's men, these wore badges. A full posse with rifles leveled, Nobody move. The lead rider was a grizzled man with sharp eyes. Sheriff Garrett, Salt Lake jurisdiction. Drop your weapons. Ulysses's mind raced. Law might mean protection from Edison, or it might mean being handed over to Crowley's bought judges. Sheriff, he said carefully, we're being pursued by hired killers. They set this fire to flush us out. That's so. Garrett didn't lower his rifle. And you'd be... Samuel and Grace Hammond, Victoria said, steady despite her wound. We have papers. Save it. Garrett spat tobacco juice. You're Victoria Crowley and Ulysses Morgan. Every lawman in 3 territories has your descriptions. He studied them with hard eyes. Question is, what am I going to do about it? Before anyone could answer, Edison's men crested the rim, saw the posse, and opened fire. The forest exploded in a crossfire of lead and curses. Idiots! Garrett roared, diving for cover, firing on sworn deputies. The battle was brief but vicious. Edison's men, thinking they faced only 2 fugitives, had walked into a hornet's nest. The posse, whatever their feelings about Ulysses and Victoria, responded to being shot at with prejudice. When the smoke cleared gun smoke, now mixing with forest fire, 3 of Edison's men were down. The rest had fled back down the trail. Well, Garrett said, dusting off his hat. That complicated things. He looked at Ulysses and Victoria. You 2 are under arrest, but given those fellows just tried to kill sworn lawmen, maybe we discuss this civilized-like. They were escorted to the posse's camp, a defensible position with the fire burning itself out against a bare ridge. Victoria's wound was properly tended by a deputy with medical training. Here's the situation, Garrett said, pouring coffee from a blackened pot. Nathaniel Crowley wants his daughter back. Put up a $1,000 reward. Says she was kidnapped. He eyed Victoria. You kidnapped, Miss? No. Victoria met his gaze squarely. I left of my own will. My father tried to have me killed for loving an Apache man. Garrett sipped his coffee. Then there's you. Morgan? Wanted for questioning in the deaths of 2 men at the old Morgan place. Self-defense, Ulysses said. They broke in. Threatened Miss Crowley. Uh-huh. Garrett was quiet for a moment. You know what I think. I think this whole mess stinks like week-old fish. Crowley's got his hand in too many pockets, and that Edison fellow's been leaving bodies across the territory. So what now? Victoria asked. Now we got a problem. Garrett gestured to his men. Half my boys think that reward money sounds mighty nice. Other half heard stories about Bent Creek. About what really happened there. He studied them over his cup. You mentioned papers. Franklin's work. Ulysses tensed. Admitting connection to the dead conductor could be dangerous. Thought so. Garrett actually smiled. Ben Franklin was a good man. Helped my sister disappear when her husband got violent. She's teaching school in Oregon now. Happy as can be. The smile faded. Heard Edison killed him. He died helping us escape, Victoria said quietly. Gave us these? She produced the forged documents. Garrett examined them. Good work. Ben always did quality. He handed them back. Here's what's gonna happen. Forest fires made the trails dangerous. Gonna take us 3, maybe 4 days to get back to Salt Lake. Lot can happen in that time. Prisoners could escape. Posse might lose their trail in all this smoke. Understanding dawned. Sheriff. Course, escaped prisoners would be foolish to head for California. Too obvious. Now, Oregon, that's different. Got a letter from my sister saying they need good people up there. Farmers, teachers. He stood, stretching. Gonna check on the horses. Be back in an hour. Sure would be a shame if them dangerous fugitives slipped away while I was gone. He walked off, whistling. Several deputies found urgent business elsewhere, leaving only a young man who immediately became fascinated with cleaning his rifle. He's letting us go, Victoria breathed. More than that. Ulysses was already gathering their few possessions. He's giving us direction. Oregon, not California." They slipped away as full darkness fell, the forest fire providing cover with its smoke and chaos. The young deputy never looked up from his rifle. They rode through the night on horses that mysteriously had full saddlebags and a map marking water sources. By dawn, they were 20 miles north, the smoke a distant smudge on the horizon. "Do you think Edison will follow?" Victoria asked as they watered the horses. "To California, probably. That was our stated destination." Ulysses studied the map. "But Oregon, that's different. New start, truly new." "What about my father?" "Your father thinks you're heading for San Francisco. Let him watch the ports there while we build something real in Oregon." He pulled her close. "If you're willing." "I'm willing." She leaned into him. "But first, I want to do something." 2 days later, they stood on a ridge overlooking Bent Creek. The massacre site was overgrown now, nature reclaiming what violence had taken, but Victoria knew where to look. They worked in silence, gathering stones, building cairns. One for William, one for Thomas, one for Mary, one for Joseph, and smaller ones for all the others whose names they'd never know. "William Running Bear," Victoria said softly, placing the last stone on her lover's marker. "Father of Thomas beloved." "Mary Morgan," Ulysses added to another cairn. "Joseph Morgan, taken too soon." They stood together as the wind whispered through the grass. No prayer's words seemed insufficient, just two people acknowledging loss, honoring the dead. "They're together now," Victoria said finally. "All of them, beyond the reach of hate. And we're here." Ulysses took her hand. "To remember, to live." They mounted up as the sun peaked. Oregon waited, distant and full of promise. Behind them, the cairn stood sentinel over ground made sacred by blood and tears. "Ready?" Ulysses asked. "Ready?" Victoria touched her belly, a gesture so slight he almost missed it. Then understanding struck the exhaustion, the morning sickness she'd tried to hide. "Victoria, 2 months, I think." Her smile was radiant and terrified. "A new life, Ulysses, something that's ours." He pulled her close, kissing her deeply. "A child, after all the death, a child." "Then we'd best hurry to Oregon," he said. "Give this little one a proper home." They rode north, leaving the past in stone cairns and smoke. Edison might still hunt, Crowley might never forgive, but life had found a way to bloom in the wasteland of their grief. Oregon stretched ahead, green and promising. They would be Samuel and Grace Hammond there, farmers perhaps, or teachers. They would raise their child free from the hatred that had taken so much. And sometimes, on quiet nights, they would tell stories of the people they'd loved and lost, of an Apache warrior who laughed at bad language lessons, of a German woman who baked bread for strangers, of a small boy who loved tracking rabbits, of another who collected stones. The dead would live in these stories, in the child who would carry their blood forward. Love had survived where bullets couldn't kill it, grown stronger in the broken places. It was not a happy ending, too much pain for that. But it was a beginning, and in this hard land, that was miracle enough. The smoke from the forest fire had driven them deeper into the wilderness than they'd planned. Now. 3 days later, Ulysses and Victoria found themselves in a box canyon with walls of red sandstone, their horses exhausted, their water running low. Behind them, the persistent sound of Pursuit Edison and his remaining men, dogged as bloodhounds. There, Victoria pointed to a cluster of boulders near the canyon's dead end. "We make our stand there." Ulysses nodded grimly. They'd run as far as they could. His rifle held 8 rounds, her Colt 6, 14 bullets against however many men Edison had left. The math was simple and brutal. They positioned themselves among the rocks as the sun climbed toward noon, turning the canyon into an oven. Victoria's arm was healing but still weak. She steadied the pistol with both hands, jaw set with determination. "I want you to know," she said quietly. "These weeks with you have been worth everything." "Don't talk like that's goodbye," Ulysses said. "We're not done yet." The first riders appeared at the canyon mouth. Edison rode in front, his wounded shoulder strapped tight. Behind him came 9 men, hired guns with faces carved by violence and greed. They spread out, taking cover behind scattered rocks and scrub. "Morgan," Edison's voice echoed off the canyon walls. "You've run out of room, send out the woman, and I'll make your death quick." Counteroffer. Ulysses called back. "You turn around and ride away. Live to spend whatever Crowley's paying you." Edison laughed, harsh as a crow's call. "Can't do that, friend. This has gone personal. You cost me good men." "You cost yourself good men," Victoria shouted. "Following a tyrant's orders, killing for silver and hate." "Shut your mouth," Edison's composure cracked. "You're nothing but a traitor to your race. Your father should have drowned you at birth rather than let you grow up to bed down with savages." Victoria's shot took his hat off, close enough to part his hair. "The next one won't miss." The canyon erupted. Gunfire thundered between the walls, lead whining off stone. Ulysses fired carefully, making each shot count. One man spun and fell. Another clutched his leg, screaming, but there were too many, and they were closing in. Ulysses' Victoria pointed to their left. 2 men were climbing the rocks, trying to flank them. He swung the rifle, fired. One climber tumbled backward, the other ducked down, pinned but alive. 5 shots left. "They're trying to surround us," he said. "Victoria, I need you to—" Her Colt roared. A man who'd been creeping up on their right collapsed. "You were saying—" "Despite everything," he smiled. "Remind me never to make you angry." Too late for that. But she smiled back, fierce and beautiful. More men were moving, using superior numbers to gain ground. Ulysses counted muzzle flashes, at least 7 guns still firing. His ammunition was almost gone. "That's when they heard it. Hoofbeats. Lots of them, echoing from the canyon entrance." "Boss," one of Edison's men yelled. "Riders coming!" Edison turned, expecting reinforcements. His face went white at what he saw. Apache warriors poured into the canyon like a flash flood. 20, 30, more. They rode painted ponies and carried rifles that spoke with deadly accuracy. Edison's men, caught between 2 forces, panicked. The leader of the Apache band was a man in his 40s. Face weathered but noble, he rode straight for Edison, who was frantically trying to reload. "Theodore Edison," the Apache said in perfect English. "You killed my brother at Bent Creek. His name was William Running Bear." Edison's face twisted with terror and rage. "Filthy savage, you can't—" The Apache's rifle butt caught him in the face, dropping him from his horse. Around the canyon, Edison's surviving men were throwing down their weapons, hands raised in surrender. The Apache dismounted, standing over Edison's semi-conscious form. Then he looked up at the rocks where Ulysses and Victoria had taken cover. "You can come down," he called. "You are Victoria. Yes, William's woman." Victoria stood slowly, wonder in her eyes. "Yes, you're Robert, William's brother. He spoke of you often." "Robert Standing Bear," the man confirmed. "William sent word before he died. Asked me to watch for you if you survived. We have been searching since we heard of the fire." They climbed down carefully. Victoria approached Robert with tears streaming. "William is gone. Our son, too. I couldn't save them." Robert's face softened. "I know, sister. We mourned them with proper ceremonies. Their spirits are at peace." He studied her with dark eyes. "William loved you truly. In our way. That makes you family." "How did you find us?" Ulysses asked. "Smoke from the fire, then gunshots." Robert smiled grimly. "Edison makes much noise, like a wounded bear, all roar and no wisdom. He looked down at Edison, who was stirring. This one has much to answer for. Wait, Ulysses said as several warriors hauled Edison to his feet. What are you planning? Justice, Robert said simply. He will face those whose families he destroyed. Their voices will determine his fate. Edison's eyes went wild. You can't, I'm a white man. There are laws. Your laws. Robert's voice was cold. Where were your laws at Bent Creek, at Sand Creek, at Washita River? He nodded to his men. Take him. No. Edison struggled against the hands holding him. Morgan, you can't let them. You're white. You're civilized. Civilization. Ulysses stepped close to Edison. You murdered children in the name of civilization. You hanged a woman for loving freely. He thought of Mary, of Joseph, of all the innocents. Whatever justice they give you, it's more than you gave others. Edison was dragged away, his curses fading into the distance. His remaining men sat under guard, looking terrified but unharmed. They will be released at the territorial border, Robert said, reading Ulysses's concern. We are not Edison. We do not kill the defenseless. He turned to Victoria. Now, sister, you are hurt and tired. Come, our camp is not far. We can't impose, Victoria began. Family does not impose, Robert said firmly. You will rest, heal. Then we will talk of the future. The Apache camp was hidden in a valley rich with grass and fresh water. Women and children emerged from teepees to stare at the newcomers. Some faces showed suspicion, but Robert's presence kept it from becoming hostility. An elderly woman approached, studying Victoria with keen eyes. She said something in Apache, and Robert translated, My mother says you have the look of one who carries life. Is this true? Victoria's hand went to her belly. Yes, I'm with child. The old woman's face transformed with a smile. She spoke rapidly, gesturing. She says William's spirit returns. Robert translated. Not the same, but continuing, the circle unbroken. He smiled. You will stay with us until the child comes. This is decided. We couldn't, Ulysses said. Your people have risked enough. You are wrong, Robert interrupted. William told me of you. Morgan, how you lost your family to men like Edison. How you saved Victoria when you could have taken revenge. He placed a hand on Ulysses' shoulder. A man who chooses mercy over vengeance is welcome among us. That evening, as they sat around the communal fire, Victoria asked Robert about Edison's fate. He stands trial tomorrow, Robert said. The families of those he killed will speak. Then the council will decide. Will they? She couldn't finish. Kill him, perhaps. Or perhaps they will mark him and send him into the desert with nothing. Let the land judge him. Robert stared into the fire. We are not the savages he named us, but neither are we angels. Justice has many faces. Later, in the teepee they'd been given, Victoria curled against Ulysses. It feels strange, she whispered, being here with William's people, carrying your child. Strange how, like two rivers joining, everything I was with William, everything I am with you, flowing together. She took his hand, placed it on her still flat belly. This child will carry all of it, Apache and white, love and loss past and future. Heavy burden for someone so small, Ulysses murmured. Or great strength, she countered, to be born from love that survived so much. They lay in comfortable silence, listening to the camp settling for night, somewhere. A woman sang a lullaby. A baby cried and was quickly soothed. Normal sounds of life continuing despite all attempts to stop it. What did Robert mean about Edison being marked? Ulysses asked. Victoria was quiet for a moment. William told me once, for the worst crimes, they cut the tendons in the ankles. The person can walk, slowly, but never run again, never chase, never escape. They live but as living reminders of what hatred costs. Harsh justice. Is it harsher than hanging a woman for love than shooting children for silver? She turned to face him. I'm tired of apologizing for their ways. Ulysses, different doesn't mean wrong. I'm not criticizing, he said, just adjusting. Everything I was taught, everything I believed about many things. It's changing. Good. She kissed him softly. Change means growth. Staying the same means dying inside. The next morning, they witnessed Edison's trial. He stood in the center of a circle, hands bound, while one after another, Apache men and women spoke, even without understanding the language. The pain in their voices was clear. Mothers who'd lost children, children who'd lost parents, widows, orphans, survivors. When the last had spoken, Robert translated Edison's sentence, not death, but marking. He would carry the scars of his crimes, walk slowly through the world he'd tried to destroy. Edison screamed and begged, but the decision was final. As the sentence was carried out, Ulysses and Victoria looked away during this. Edison's cries echoed off the valley walls. Now he understands, Robert said quietly, what it means to be helpless before another's power. Edison was given water, food, and pointed toward the nearest white settlement. He limped away, a broken man who would never ride proud again. Some will say we should have killed him, Robert observed. Death would have been easier, Victoria said. This way, he lives with it, every step, every day, remembering. 3 months passed in the Apache camp. Victoria's belly grew round, and her spirits lifted. She learned the women's songs, helped with daily tasks, found a peace she hadn't known since losing William. Ulysses struggled more, fighting against ingrained prejudices and assumptions, but gradually, working alongside the men, playing with the children, he began to see them not as Apache, but as people, individuals with hopes, fears, jokes, and sorrows. One evening, Robert sat with him as the sun set. You are thinking of leaving. It wasn't a question. Ulysses nodded. Victoria's getting close to her time. She should have a doctor, a proper... Our women have birthed babies for generations without white doctors, Robert said mildly. But I understand. You want to give her choices. He was quiet for a moment. There is a mission. 2 days north. Father Miguel is a good man. He helps all who come. Asks no questions about past. You'd let us go? You were never prisoners, my friend. But know this, you will always have a place here. You and Victoria and the child. Robert smiled. William's child will know his father's people. This is important. Yes, Ulysses agreed. It is. They prepared to leave the next morning. The whole camp turned out to see them off. The old woman pressed a beaded necklace into Victoria's hands, speaking rapidly. For the baby, Robert translated, protection and blessing. Victoria was crying openly, embracing the women who'd become sisters. Ulysses found his own eyes burning as men he'd worked beside clasped his hand. Thank you, he told Robert, for everything. No thanks needed. We are family now. Robert helped Victoria mount her horse, swollen belly making it difficult. Remember, the child belongs to both worlds. Teach him this. Him, Victoria smiled through her tears. So certain. A grandmother's wisdom is rarely wrong, Robert said. Now go. Father Miguel expects you. They rode from the valley, turning often to wave until the camp disappeared behind a rise. Ahead lay uncertainty again, but somehow it felt different now. They carried blessings instead of curses, family instead of isolation. No regrets, Ulysses asked as they made camp that night. None. Victoria touched the beaded necklace at her throat. We'll go to Father Miguel, have the baby safely, then we decide. Oregon still calls, but now we know we have other places too, other families. She smiled. The world got bigger. Ulysses, That's no cause for regret. He pulled her close, feeling the baby kick against his hand. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Crowley was still out there. The hatred that spawned Edison still poisoned hearts. But tonight, they had each other, the stars, and the knowledge that love could bridge worlds thought impossible to cross. It was more than enough. It was everything. The courthouse in Dustwater hadn't seen such a crowd since the territory became a state. People pressed against the windows, craning to see inside where the most sensational trial in recent memory was about to begin. At the defendant's table sat Victoria, dressed in simple black, her infant son James sleeping in her arms. Beside her, Ulysses watched the door where any moment now, her father would enter. It had been Edison broken, limping Edison who'd set this in motion. He'd reached civilization and talked, spreading wild tales of Apache justice and white traitors. Most dismissed him as touched by the sun, but word reached Nathaniel Crowley. The old man had come himself, bringing lawyers and demanding his daughter's arrest for theft, conspiracy, and moral corruption. Now they would face each other in court, with half the territory watching. The doors burst open. Nathaniel Crowley entered like a storm, silver-haired and rigid with fury. His eyes found Victoria and burned with such hatred that baby James stirred uneasily. All rise for the Honorable Judge Abraham Lincoln Parker. The bailiff announced. Judge Parker was known for fairness, which was why Victoria's lawyer, a young man named Clarence Darrow, had fought to have him preside. He took his seat, studying the packed courtroom with shrewd eyes. "This court will have order," he said mildly, but his voice carried steel. The crowd settled. "Mr. Prosecutor, you may begin." The territorial prosecutor, clearly uncomfortable with the case, but bound by Crowley's influence, stood. "Your Honor, we intend to show that Victoria Crowley did willfully steal from her father, conspire with hostile Indians, and engage in behavior that corrupted public morals." "Mr. Darrow." The young lawyer rose, deceptively casual. "Your Honor, we'll demonstrate that Miss Victoria, now Mrs. Morgan, is guilty of nothing more than loving freely and speaking truth about crimes committed against innocent people." "Objection!" Crowley's personal lawyer, Augustus Hill, jumped up. "The defendant's marriage to this Morgan is not recognized. They were married by Father Miguel at San Xavier Mission," Darrow said smoothly. "I have the certificate." Judge Parker nodded. "Objection overruled. Proceed." The prosecutor called his first witness Theodore Edison. He limped to the stand, ankles still bearing scars. The crowd murmured at his appearance. "State your name for the record." "Theodore Edison." His voice had lost its former power. "Former employee of Mr. Nathaniel Crowley." "Tell us about the defendant's actions." Edison's tale was venomous. Victoria's unnatural relationship with William, her theft of horses when she fled, her conspiracy with Apache raiders. But Darrow was ready.
Mr. Edison,"
he began his cross-examination. "You say Miss Victoria stole horses. Were these her personal mounts?" "They belonged to her father." "Who gave them to her as gifts?" "Correct. I have the bills of sale." Darrow produced papers. "Now, about this conspiracy. You tracked Miss Victoria to an abandoned ranch. Did you not?" "Yes." "And what happened there?" Edison's face darkened. "Morgan shot my men." "After you broke into the house, after you threatened violence." Darrow's voice sharpened. "After you'd already hanged Miss Victoria and left her for dead." "I was following orders." "Whose orders?" Edison's jaw worked. Finally, Nathaniel Crowley's. The courtroom erupted. Judge Parker gavelled for order. "You're saying Mr. Crowley ordered his daughter's death?" "She dishonored the family," Edison muttered, took up with a savage. "I object to that language," Darrow said. Sustained. The witness will refer to the deceased as Mr. Running Bear. Edison's testimony crumbled from there. By the time Darrow finished, even the prosecutor looked shaken. Next came witnesses to Victoria's character, Father Miguel, who spoke of her kindness and devotion. Mrs. Garrett, the sheriff's wife, who'd hidden them briefly. Even Robert Standing Bear, who'd traveled from Apache territory to testify. "She is my brother's widow," Robert said with dignity. "In our culture, this makes her family. She honored our ways, learned our language, bore my brother's child with love." But the most dramatic moment came when Darrow called Victoria herself. She took the stand, still holding James, who watched the proceedings with solemn dark eyes, William's eyes in a face that showed both parents. "Mrs. Morgan," Darrow began gently, "tell us about Bent Creek." Victoria's voice was steady as she recounted the massacre. William's death, watching her 3-year-old son shot down. Women in the gallery wept openly. Men who'd fought Indians shifted uncomfortably. "And why did this massacre occur?" Darrow asked. "Objection," Hill shouted. "Relevance." "Your Honor," Darrow said, "the prosecution claims my client stole from her father. We contend she was fleeing for her life after discovering his crimes." "I'll allow it." Judge Parker ruled. Victoria looked directly at her father. "Because there was silver on Apache land. I found the surveys, the investment papers. The massacre was planned to clear the land for mining." "Lies," Crowley erupted, face purple. "My daughter's been corrupted by savages." "Mr. Crowley, you'll have your chance to testify." Judge Parker warned. "I have the documents," Victoria continued. "Hidden at Father Miguel's mission, maps, contracts, letters discussing the need to remove obstacles to the mining claims. And these obstacles were Apache families, women and children who happened to live above silver deposits." The courtroom was dead silent. Victoria shifted James to her other arm, the movement drawing every eye to the baby living proof of love between worlds. "Mrs. Morgan," Darrow said softly, "do you regret your choices?" "I regret the pain, the death, the hatred." Her voice grew stronger. "But love never. William was the gentlest man I knew. He died protecting our son. How can I regret loving someone that noble?" When Crowley took the stand, his arrogance had curdled into rage. He admitted ordering Edison to retrieve his daughter, but denied ordering violence. The documents Victoria mentioned forgeries. He claimed the massacre necessary military action. But Darrow had saved his best for last. "Mr. Crowley, do you recognize this?" He produced a letter. Crowley went white. "Where did you get that?" "From Theodore Edison, who kept it for insurance." Darrow read aloud. "Edison, the Apache camp must be cleared by month's end. Leave no witnesses. My daughter's unfortunate attachment makes discretion vital. Do what's necessary." That's out of context. "What context justifies murdering children, Mr. Crowley?" The old man's face twisted. "They were savages, animals. My daughter degraded herself." "So you had her beaten and hanged. She needed correction, I'm her father." "No." Victoria stood suddenly, James in her arms. "You're not my father. A father protects, a father loves. You're just a man who saw his daughter as property." Her voice rang clear. "I'm not your daughter anymore. I'm William's widow, Ulysses' wife, James's mother. I define myself now." The gallery erupted in mixed reactions: shock, approval, outrage. Judge Parker gavelled repeatedly before achieving order. Closing arguments were brief. The prosecutor, clearly reluctant, asked for conviction on technical grounds. Darrow painted a picture of a woman fleeing tyranny, finding love, defending herself against murderous pursuit. Judge Parker retired to chambers. The weight felt eternal. James fussed, and Victoria nursed him quietly, ignoring scandalized whispers. Ulysses kept a protective hand on her shoulder. When the judge returned, His expression was grave. "This case," he began, "touches the heart of what kind of territory, what kind of people we choose to be." He looked at Crowley. "The evidence shows a man who viewed his daughter as chattel, who ordered violence to protect financial interests, who corrupted law enforcement for personal gain." Then at Victoria, the defendant fled an intolerable situation, formed a loving family, and defended herself when attacked. That she loved across racial lines may offend some, but last I checked, love itself is no crime. On all charges, I find the defendant not guilty. The courtroom exploded. Crowley lurched to his feet, screaming about corruption, about bought judges, about the end of civilization. His lawyers tried to calm him as supporters and detractors shouted at each other. "Furthermore," Judge Parker continued, raising his voice, "I'm ordering an investigation into the Bent Creek incident. Mr. Edison's testimony and these documents warrant official scrutiny." "You can't," Crowley raged. "I'll have you removed." "You'll do nothing," a new voice said from the doorway. Federal Marshal Wyatt Earp entered, badge gleaming. "Nathaniel Crowley, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corruption, and land fraud." As Earp's deputies took Crowley away, still screaming threats, Victoria sagged against Ulysses. It was over, finally over. Outside the courthouse, people pressed close, some to congratulate, others to condemn. But a path cleared when Robert Standing Bear and his warriors approached. "Sister," Robert said, smiling at James, "you spoke well. William would be proud." "Thank you for coming," Victoria said through tears. "Family stands together." He looked at Ulysses. "You protect them well. William chose rightly when he trusted you." As the Apache delegation prepared to leave, Robert pressed something into Victoria's hand, a small leather pouch. "For James, when he's old enough, bring him to us. He should know both his peoples." That evening, in their hotel room, Victoria and Ulysses sat watching James sleep. The baby had his mother's nose, his father William's eyes, and something in his chin that might have been Ulysses already. "What now?" Victoria asked. "Father's wealth will be tied up in courts. Edison's testimony will reopen old wounds. Some will always see me as the woman who loved an Apache. Then we go where that's not a shame but a strength." Ulysses said, "Oregon, like we planned. Start that farm. Raise James knowing his whole heritage." "A farmer," Victoria smiled. "Can you handle such a quiet life after all this?" "With you, I could handle anything." He kissed her softly. "Besides, quiet sounds perfect." 3 months later, they stood on their own land in Oregon's Willamette Valley, 40 acres of good soil. A small house, hope planted as deep as spring wheat. James crawled in the grass, chasing butterflies with the single-minded determination he'd inherited from both mothers. Victoria kept her promise. Each year, they visited the Apache. James learned to ride from Robert, to track from his cousins, to sing the old songs. He also learned his letters from Victoria, farming from Ulysses, and tolerance from both. The scars remained Victoria's back, Ulysses's heart, the empty spaces where loved ones should have been. But scars could be beautiful, proof of survival, maps of a journey from hate to love. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Victoria would tell James about his first father, how William laughed, how he loved, how he died protecting those he cherished. Ulysses would add stories of Mary and Joseph, until all their ghosts sat peacefully together in memory. It wasn't the life any of them had planned, but it was the life they'd fought for, bled for, chosen against all odds. And in the end, that made it perfect. Love had won, not easily, not without cost, but definitively. And in a world still learning that truth, perhaps that was miracle enough. 10 years had passed since the trial that shook Dustwater. The Oregon farm had prospered under Ulysses and Victoria's care, their apple orchard now spreading across the hillside like a green promise. James, nearly 11, moved between the rows with practiced ease, checking for pests with the sharp eyes he'd inherited from both his fathers. "Marider's coming," James called from his perch in the highest apple tree. Victoria emerged from the house, flour still dusting her hands from morning baking. Ulysses looked up from repairing the barn door, immediately alert. Old habits died hard. Unexpected visitors still made them wary. But as the riders drew closer, Victoria's face broke into a smile.
It's Robert.
Robert Standing Bear had aged gracefully, silver now threading his hair. With him rode 3 younger Apache men and, surprisingly, a white woman in traveling clothes. "Sister." Robert embraced Victoria warmly, then clasped Ulysses' hand. "Brother, you look well."
"As do you,"
Victoria said.
"But who—"
"This is Miss Clara Barton." Robert introduced the woman. "She's establishing medical services for all peoples. I'm guiding her to various communities." Clara dismounted, studying them with intelligent eyes. "Mrs. Morgan, I've heard your story. It's an honor to meet someone who chose love over convention." Over dinner, they learned why Robert had really come. The government was pushing new treaties, trying to force Apache bands onto smaller reservations. Some spoke of fighting. Others, like Robert, sought different paths. "Education," he said, watching James read to the younger Apache boys. "That's our weapon now. We need schools where our children can learn both ways, Apache wisdom and white knowledge."
"A bridge between worlds,"
Victoria murmured.
"Yes, and I want James to be part of it."
Robert met their eyes. "There's talk of establishing a special school, funded by progressive folks back east. Children of all backgrounds learning together." Ulysses frowned. "You want to take James?" "No, I want you all to come." Robert smiled. "We need teachers. Who better than those who've lived in both worlds?" They talked late into the night. Clara shared stories of her work during the war, her belief that healing meant more than mending bodies. It meant mending the rifts between peoples. The Apache boys, shy at first, soon joined James in racing through the orchard, their laughter echoing off the hills. "I need to show you something," Victoria told Robert as the evening waned. She led him to a small grove beyond the orchard where 5 headstones stood in peaceful shade. William Running Bear, Thomas Running Bear, Mary Morgan, Joseph Morgan, and newest, smallest Sarah Morgan, the daughter she and Ulysses had lost to fever 2 winters past. Robert knelt before his brother's stone, speaking softly in Apache. When he rose, his eyes were wet. "You honor them well." "We bring James here every week," Victoria said. "He knows their stories, all of them." "Good." Robert touched each stone gently. "The dead ask only to be remembered truly." That night, as their guests slept, Ulysses and Victoria walked their land. The moon was full, turning everything silver: the orchard, the wheat fields, the small schoolhouse they'd built for local children. "Could you leave this?" Ulysses asked. "We've built something good here." "We built it to heal," Victoria replied. "Maybe now we're meant to help others heal too." "You want to go?" She nodded. "That school Robert speaks of, it could change things. James could help other children like him, caught between worlds." She took his hand. "But not without you, never without you." Ulysses thought of the bitter man he'd been, alone in an abandoned house with only ghosts for company. Victoria had brought him back to life. How could he deny her the chance to do that for others? "All right," he said. "We'll go." 3 months later, they stood before a building unlike any in the territory, the Harmony School, built where Apache land met settled country. It was Clara's vision made real, a place where children of all backgrounds could learn together. The opening day brought chaos. White parents suspicious of Apache influence. Apache families wary of white education. Everyone watching James, the mixed blood boy who moved easily between groups, translating languages and cultures with a child's unself-conscious grace. "Welcome." Victoria addressed the assembled families, James beside her. I stand before you as someone who lost everything to hatred, my first husband, my firstborn son. But I also stand as someone who found love again, built family again, chose hope again. She touched James's shoulder. Our children can have better, not by forgetting who they are, but by learning who others are too. An Apache mother stood.
My son, will he lose our ways?
No, Robert answered. He'll learn Apache history, language, traditions, but also reading, writing, mathematics, strength in both worlds. A white rancher scowled. You expect me to send my daughter to learn alongside? Alongside children? Ulysses interrupted. Just children. If that frightens you, perhaps you should ask yourself why. Slowly, carefully, the school took shape. Victoria taught reading and writing, weaving in stories from all cultures. Ulysses handled mathematics and farming, showing how Apache agricultural wisdom could enhance modern methods. Robert led cultural classes, teaching Apache ways to all who'd listen. Not everyone approved. Windows were broken, threats were made. But also a white girl taught an Apache boy to read. An Apache girl showed a white boy how to track deer. Parents who'd never spoken began to nod at each other, then talk, then even smile. James thrived. His easy movement between worlds inspiring other mixed-heritage children to embrace all parts of themselves. He organized games where Apache and white children played together, translated during disputes, and showed by example that different didn't mean enemy. The school's reputation spread. Clara Barton visited regularly, bringing supplies and progressive teachers. Newspaper reporters came from as far as San Francisco, some to mock, others to marvel. Through it all, Victoria and Ulysses worked, taught, loved, and slowly watched walls crumble. One evening, as spring painted the desert in wildflowers, they received unexpected visitors. Theodore Edison arrived, but not as they'd known him. Age and suffering had carved away his arrogance, leaving something almost humble. With him was a young woman, his daughter, he explained, who'd insisted on meeting the people who'd changed her father. I came to apologize, Edison said, the words clearly difficult. The Apache could have killed me. Instead, they showed mercy I'd never given. He looked at Victoria. I was wrong. About everything. Victoria studied him long, then nodded. Apology accepted. What matters is who you are going forward. Edison's daughter enrolled in the school. Despite his neighbors' outrage, she became one of their best students, eventually going east to study medicine, planning to return and serve all communities. Years flowed like water. The school grew. James left for college, a scholarship to Harvard, the first mixed-blood student they'd accepted. He wrote weekly, sharing his struggles and triumphs, always ending with, "Tell all the fathers and mothers I miss them." For he had many now, Ulysses, who raised him, William, whose blood he carried, Robert, who taught him pride, and the whole community that shaped him. Victoria's hair silvered. Ulysses's hands grew gnarled from work, but their love deepened. Seasoned by shared purpose and countless small victories, each child who learned tolerance, each parent who released prejudice, each moment when someone chose understanding over fear. On their 20th wedding anniversary, the school held a celebration. Former students came from across the country, doctors, teachers, farmers, writers, Apache and white, mixed and pure, all gathering to honor the couple who'd built bridges with their own bodies and hearts. Look what you've done, Clara told them, gesturing at the laughing crowd where cultures mixed freely. Not us, Victoria corrected. Love did this. We just refused to let hate have the last word. As sunset painted the sky, James stood to speak. Now, a man, professor at the very college that had once barred his kind. He looked like William but carried himself like Ulysses, a perfect blend of his three parents. My mother taught me that we are not bound by blood alone, he said. That family is chosen, daily, in acts of love and courage. My fathers, all of them, showed me that strength comes not from standing apart, but standing together. He raised his glass. To bridges built of bodies and hearts, to love that conquers division, to the choice made daily to see each other as human first, always. The crowd toasted, voices mingling in English and Apache and Spanish, and tongues yet being born in this new world they were making. Victoria leaned into Ulysses, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart her anchor, her compass, her completion. "No regrets," he whispered, echoing his question from long ago.
"None," she whispered back. "How could I regret the path that led to this?"
Outside, the desert bloomed with spring flowers, Apache paintbrush and white evening primrose growing wild together, roots intertwined beneath the soil. The wind carried children's laughter and adults' hope and the quiet whisper of the dead, finally at peace. They had not erased the past. The scars remained on bodies, on hearts, on the land itself. But they had proven that from the deepest wounds could grow the strongest love, that bridges could be built from the very bodies hatred tried to break. The stars emerged, same stars that had watched William die and Joseph fall and Sarah breathe her last, but also the stars that witnessed new love, new life, new hope, eternal witnesses to humanity's endless capacity for both cruelty and grace. And there, in a school where Apache and white children learned together, where former enemies broke bread as friends, where love had won its quiet victory, the future was being written one heart at a time. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, loss, and redemption in the Wild West. I hope Victoria and Ulysses's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine in the telling. Please share in the comments where you're listening from, whether it's a big city, a small town, or somewhere in between. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this tale and what it means to you. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850. Give this video a like and hit that hype button to help more people discover these powerful narratives from America's frontier. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward the horizon and choosing love over hate.